The fear of having a sick child or having a problem with your child is just too big to bear. And most of the illnesses that are treated by stem cells are, genetic illnesses. So this is in many ways a lifeboat. In many ways, for families that fear because, their mother or their grandmother had leukemia or something like that, they felt that this was a way to secure the future and health for their child. And then when you did it, you felt as if, okay, that's behind me.
I'm Angela Saini. This is Lost Cells, an original Swiss Info podcast in collaboration with Pitts Gloria Productions, Future Prosh, and Studio Ochenta.
I'm Tatiana. I'm from Belgrade, Serbia. I'm 39 years old.
Tatiana and her husband Ratko are a power couple. They're both established professionals in Serbia. He's a lawyer specializing in corporate law, and Tatiana was working as a human resources consultant back in 2012. They're very comfortable speaking English. Like so many other couples expecting a baby, they were excited, doing everything they could to prepare. Like Louis Daniel and Gloria, the couple from Madrid, Tatiana was also intrigued by the promise of cord blood banking and what it might offer their future family.
I thought, we do have the money for that, and it's always good to make such a choice for your child, even if the money is thrown away, it will maybe help them later on. And we don't know yet, but science is coming on every day.
CryoSave is Europe's leading family stem cell bank. They store more than 200,000 stem cell samples from more than 40 countries.
You're looking at a new kind of medicine.
If you would like to join that fantastic opportunity, do not hesitate.
When we were making the decision, we were looking at various options. And, first of all, CryoSave was one of the banks that was most advertised in our country and in other countries. But then we also asked some physicians, we did some of our research, and it turned out that this bank was one of the most solid at the time.
Tatiana did her own digging and found that cord blood banking was a very competitive industry in Europe, with companies carving out their own strange niches.
I think the other bank was connected to the Vatican, and they had an endorsement from the Vatican, which was important because, many people are on the fence, with their faith and stem cells. And for me, this was somehow strange, and I didn't like that.
They grew up in a country that had experienced war and the instability and all the chaos that comes with it. So for Ratko, there was one key thing that sealed the deal for him to choose CryoSave.
So, it made sense to decide for the bank that had its headquarters in Switzerland. It obviously gives some additional credibility to a bank as opposed to some other country, especially at that time. And, when there is something new, we would normally, from our country, we would normally look to the countries like Switzerland or maybe Germany, and we would hope that the regulators in those countries would make sure that, the banks and other institutions work well and work by the law. And, from that perspective, it made sense that if somebody would do this out of, Bulgaria, not to speak lowly about the country, but if somebody would do this from Bulgaria, we would definitely check if they would be subject to any sort of international standards. But if somebody was registered in Switzerland, we would hope that, the Swiss people, first of all, would be checking if they are following the standard. And so we decided to go for it.
When I was pregnant and when I was thinking about banking my child's cord blood, the cord blood bank, doesn't matter which one, the one I picked or another one, they would all tell you, you're doing this for your child. It's really important. It will maybe help them later on. And we don't know yet, but science is coming on every day. I just thought, better safe than sorry. And I also didn't know we were thinking of having 2 children, and maybe the second child would be the one who would need the cells from his older brother or sister. So I didn't have much emotional investment in that decision. I just thought it's better to do it than not to do it.
Soon, the baby was due. Tatiana was set to have a C-section, and this was the moment that her decision to store her baby's cells went from theory to reality.
I was having a C-section and I was awake, so I had spinal anesthesia. And the person who was collecting the cells was a man.
Everything was a bit fuzzy, but she understood the basic outline of what was going on, the procedure. Someone, probably her doctor, clamped the umbilical cord and collected the cells, gently massaging the blood out of the cord. But then she heard another voice.
And he started talking to me and explaining to me something about something that I need to do when I finish having a baby, which he was telling me in the middle of having a baby. And I don't know if he wanted me to write these things down. I don't know. I was literally on the desk with half my body cut open, and in one of the most emotionally strangest moments of my life. And what he was telling me at that moment is that he needed paperwork from me, that I needed to, after I came out of the hospital, to fill out this paperwork.
Tatiana and Ratko's plan to bank the cord blood was done in the belief that they were doing the best for their baby, both now and in the future. This was the promise that cord blood banking companies relied on.
Potentially, even for the most severe diseases, you expect that stem cells are something that can allow for future medicine breakthroughs to help your child. And I think for the most part, people decide to also do genetic testing as they're pregnant to see if there is anything wrong. And they are always told that these tests can only test for so many things. They cannot test for everything. For example, there is no test for autism. There is no test for predisposition for some other neurological diseases. And then having stem cells is a sort of insurance policy for families.
Their daughter Isabella grew quickly. She started walking and then running. She'd run to the door when Ratko came home from work. But then her parents noticed a problem.
So when Isabella was 14 months old, what we realized was that she had regressed in her development. She had been starting to talk, she would run and laugh and things like that. And then suddenly, you don't realize it on the first day, but after 2 or 3 weeks, you realize it.
Tatiana and Ratko are pretty cool-headed, rational people. They weren't worried when they took Isabella to her first expert to check in on her development. They just wanted to know what was going on.
And we were not scared to check with experts, so we took her to an assessment, and it depends on every country, but in our country it is not possible to get an official diagnosis of autism until age 3, but it is possible to get a diagnosis which says we're thinking this is it. So they told us, you did see something is going on, let's help the child, see how she develops, so we have to work on this now. And so that was when she was 14 months of age. So we started with things like play therapy, because at 14 months of age even speech therapy is a little bit early.
Getting that early sense of the diagnosis was a tough moment for the couple.
So what we first thought is, obviously this is a shock. We don't know how this can go. The first thing you learn about autism is that, when you see one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. You know nothing about the condition. So as many children with autism there are as many cases of autism. So it's a sort of a group name for a condition that is not still enough researched. And our first thought was not with the stem cells. But then, as we were looking for various treatments and various options, we realized that this was in many ways a neurological condition. And, if there is a neurological basis, then you think about, the brain does not regenerate itself all on its own. And then one thing led to another. And my wife saw that there was a treatment that is being developed at the Duke University. And their medical research center was actually experimenting with the use of stem cells from cord blood.
We're looking towards science and medicine to help our child develop as well as she can. And one of the things that we saw was this program at Duke University.
Found out about Duke University doing a medical trial to help children with autism.
The program was featured on the news.
This is a trial testing whether an infusion of umbilical cord blood can help reduce symptoms in children with autism.
Duke University, which is in the United States and one of the most eminent medical universities in the world, they had this program with stem cells for children with autism. And you could, in the later part of their program, they developed the option to not be in the study, but just pay an amount of money to join if you had your own bank cells. And
we thought that actually made sense because in both of those instances there was some neurological underlying condition behind the symptoms of autism or cerebral palsy.
The Salon family entered their son in a Duke University medical trial to see if his stem cells saved from cord blood at birth could reduce the effects of autism.
What they saw over a few months, they say, was remarkable.
And we thought that, okay, we have stem cells, let's see what we can do. And then the first obstacle was trying to get on board of that program.
When you first get off the plane in Raleigh-Durham in North Carolina and walk towards the baggage hall, you see a prominent sign, "Welcome to North Carolina's Research Triangle region." This area is proud of being a hub for technology and biotech. It's also home to 3 major research universities that include Duke, where Dr. Joanne Kurtzberg works.
This is a picture of a cell we call DUOC. It's a cord blood-derived cell that we grow in the laboratory over 21 days. And it is capable of remyelinating brain in many different experimental systems. And we have it in clinical trials in children with leukodystrophy.
Art is the first thing you see when you walk into the Marcus Center for Blood Cellular Cures. Joanne Kurtzberg runs it, and her passion for her work shows as soon as she's talking about what it all means.
It's a very exciting cell.
It looks very colorful.
This is a picture under a microscope, and then an artist enhanced the color. This is medical art.
Beautiful.
Joanne has spent decades working with stem cells in various ways to treat her patients. Ever since she was a medical student, she was interested in child development and autistic kids.
I liked complex medicine and chronic care of kids. And in my fellowship, some of this is serendipitous, but I started working with blood stem cells in the laboratory. I guess the only theme in my life was I liked working with kids and I wanted to do something in pediatrics, and one thing happened and another along the way.
And throughout her career, her interest in children with autism was there since early days in college.
We had the experience of transplanting a few children with autism or Asperger's syndrome who happened to have leukemia and needed a transplant for the leukemia. And we observed improvement in their autism symptoms after the transplant.
There was a lot of interest in her community of specialists in pursuing trials to look at whether cells from cord tissue or cord blood might help children with autism.
And since we had similar programs in children with cerebral palsy, we expanded our clinical approach to look at whether it was safe to infuse a child's own cord blood in a child with autism, and later to compare that to a placebo treatment to see if there was an effect of the therapy.
Working with kids who have autism presented unique challenges.
I will say treating a child with autism is very different because just coming to the hospital, coming to a clinic, getting an IV, being out of their normal situation is stressful for them.
Her team moved from level 1 onto the next phase of the clinical trial.
We did a phase 2 randomized placebo-controlled trial on 180 kids with autism, giving them either an infusion of their own cord blood or a donor cord blood or a placebo, and then checking at 6 months whether they had improvement in various types of symptoms of autism. And that included social behaviors and communication.
When the team analysed what's called the primary endpoint to see if the therapy is effective, that came out negative. There was no difference between the kids who got the placebo and the ones who got the cord blood infusion. But there were some surprises.
But when we looked at some of the secondary outcome measures like communication and executive functioning, and some of the physiologic measures like eye tracking and EEG, we saw that the children who got cord blood appeared to have a benefit.
Stories from parents whose children saw benefits from the trial started making the news and spreading across the internet in parent groups online.
Tell us, how were things before your daughter received the stem cell treatment?
So Gracie started showing signs of autism around 18 months old, and by 2 years of age, she had the diagnosis of autism.
Yeah, what we saw was, obviously the hand flapping, nonverbal, confrontational agitation, definitely tantrums. I mean, tantrums so bad that it would scare her own sister.
It really affected everyday life.
Was it the stem cells? All we know is that something happened to her.
Back in Serbia, to Tatiana and Ratko, the news about Kurtzberg's results were beyond exciting, and they badly wanted to get access to the program to see if it might help their daughter. But they faced a lot of hurdles.
Because as with any medical study, they had to track how children with autism would be before the treatment and after the treatment. And because being able to speak and understand speech was a big part of autism outlook, they would take only children from the US because they understood English. They had to do the medical study in a very rigorous way. So that was the first obstacle that we faced.
And they tried their best to sway Duke to let them gain access and kept their fingers crossed.
Look, Isabella is learning English as her first language, almost, and she speaks it as good as she does Serbian, so we think that she would be a good candidate. But then, they told us, look, we really cannot do this because it would be a problem in our study, in our statistics. And that was the first sort of a disappointment. But then they had something that is called expanded access protocol that they do once they close the study. So they will now process the results and see how the results are going. But because this treatment was found to be very safe, they were actually able to expand the access to people who would not be maybe part of the study, but could potentially benefit from it.
So Duke allowed them in under the expanded access portion of the work on autism. Ratko and Tatiana were thrilled. They knew they had Isabella's cord blood. It was safe in a nitrogen tank in Geneva, kept freezing cold and strong just for the day they needed it. All they had to do was get the cells to North Carolina. How hard could it be?
So we were hoping for our child to receive this therapy, and naturally in developmental treatments, everything, the sooner you do it, the better it is. You know, the brain is younger and can take this therapy better and use it. And so it was very stressful for us, so many phone calls. And, you know, you have this stress, am I calling too much? Am I not calling enough? Then you have to think, how will I present myself? You know, you have to be strong for this phone conversation. It's not easy. You're calling one of the most eminent medical universities in the world, and you're calling the people who are holding your child's stem cells. So this was a very stressful period of 2 years and so many choices to make. So it was a period of work and hope for us, and something we were invested in emotionally, not because we were thinking, you know, this will necessarily 100% help her, but because it is our duty as parents to ensure to our child all the chances that can help her. It's our job, and, you know, what we have to do to feel good as parents.
That's next time on Lost Cells. I'm your host, Angela Saini.